Thank you for joining the Resilient Cyber Show. My name is Chris Hughes, and today I'm joined by Piyush Sharma. Piyush, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me here.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat. You and I have been connected quite a while. We've collaborated in the past, and some other endeavors that you've been involved in, which we could touch on. But for folks that don't know you and the Tuskira team, can you tell us a bit about yourself and the team and what you guys are up to?
Absolutely. Guys, my name is Piyush Sharma, co-founder, CEO of a company called Tuskira. We came out of stealth about a couple of months ago, but we've been building this for more than a year now. So fantastic time to be in such a flamboyant market of AI and mesh. We believe that AI is going to be our next inflection point on how we have looked at the threats and the data, the triage to operations, everything. Plus, having an AI needs context, and this is why context is nothing but the data. So AI and the data mesh. That's why it makes so much sense. And yeah, we're looking forward for this kind of a market now.
Yeah, likewise. I think there's a lot of excitement in this space, a lot of innovative startups coming at things from different angles, both on the kind of securing AI piece and using AI for security. But I joked about this a little bit a moment ago here, but this isn't your first, kind of endeavor into the startup world. I'm curious, what made you want to jump back into the fray here, and go back into the startup life again? Why now? Why this problem?
Actually, it's a great question. Me, I've been in cyber for 20 years now. I worked on product product like Norton for Macintosh, so endpoint protection, EDR. This is something I know, and this is something I love. So I'm very passionate about cyber. If I'm not building cyber, I'll probably be selling cyber. I'll probably be investing in cyber. And just for the intellectual curiosity's sake, building as a operator is far more intellectually satisfying. Number one. Number two, if you just take a step back, what industry have seen in November 2022, when the OpenAI announced their first, a second model technically, the problem in cyberspace has moved from detection to analysis. The tech on the detection side have grown so mature, so smart that they can find any kind of problem. But the problem that now the long tail is how do we make sense of it? And this is where AI thrives. AI is all about be able to go correlate millions of data points and bring out some output of that some form. So a new world of new market, new the existing problems are still holds good, and so why not we make another attempt to see if we can do something here.
Yeah, I was going to save this question for a little bit further in, but you brought it up. So, as you said, we've gotten very good at, finding problems, fixing them, not so much. We know alert fatigue, for example, is a big problem. We saw the phase of shift left. We added a lot of tools to security pipelines, SAST, DAST, SCA, you name the acronym soup. And
Right.
we found a lot of problems. And now we're burying teams in vulnerability backlogs that are kind of growing exponentially year over year. I think last year it was 40,000 CVEs, right? It's now 200,000 plus in the MVD alone, not counting other, security advisory databases and things like that. And teams are just struggling, So I'm curious, like, how do you guys, at your team, how do you guys come at this problem of, kind of alert fatigue, vulnerability overload, those kind of things?
Sure. And I'm talking pure intellectually, not as a Tuskira spokesman. If I just take a step back, there are three things that matters today. Three top second industry problem. Number one, the volume alert is increasing almost like 20-22%. That was the number in an analyst research paper. Number two, your vulnerability backlog is increasing, and backlog is just one part of it. So, and number three is your capacity. If you look at the CISO budgets are not expanding. The amount, even if the data and the volume has increased, the budget is quite below average when it comes to growing the budget, because industry looks at cyber spend as a different cost, not as a P&L, right? There's no profit and loss here. So if you have to do more in less or with what you have, we have to look at a different approach. For example, you have 100,000 vulnerabilities. You are only fixing 20% today. Patching has a law of consequential applies here, where you patch more, you introduce more. So defenders have learned the art of making, keeping that balance, that how much should I fix that I gets the maximum outcome. Up until 2 years ago, this was a traditional practice, that I can actually fix 20-30% and keep 70% on my backlog, and I don't have to fix it because the risk is low. But when AI actually came out, there are today 3 GPT services in dark web who allows you to create various kind of exploits on existing vulnerabilities. There are 5 notable breaches happened in last 2024, in 2024 only, where vulnerabilities which were like 8 years old and low and medium severity were exploited. So now suddenly you notice that defenders will not just focus on top 20% or 30%, they also have to now focus on 60-70% of the bottom ones, which means that you have to throw more resources, more capacity, more technology, more investment. This is why this is why we personally believe that you can't patch everything for various reasons. What are the options you have? So if you do have to keep your budget limited, if you have to keep the constraint of the budget and the capacity, what are the options you have? So our opinion is that vulnerability is going to go further escalated, because the ability of exploit more and more vulnerabilities is actually going to grow exponentially. 2 reasons. One, vulnerability behavior itself is about to change. Why? Because the tech is also changing. Every software of this world is going to go through a transformation of AI. So if you look at the bottommost part, the infrastructure is changing, your softwares are changing, the vulnerability posture will change. So that's the hypothesis we took. So we said that if we have to solve a problem, this is actually a far bigger problem, because this is a problem that firsthand will be faced by the defenders.
Yeah, I think you said a few things there that I agree with. First off is, the remediation capacity, as you talked about, 20-30%. The security, technical debt or vulnerability backlog keeps growing accumulatively because people can't remediate everything. Historically, we've rallied around, kind of CVSS-based scores, and if it's a 7 or above, we prioritize it. If not, we don't. Attackers are keen on that. They know, hey, this other 70% of the vulnerabilities or whatever the case is, they're not addressing these, right? So those are still there. They're able to exploit, moderate or low vulnerabilities, or even chain them together to have more of a consequential impact. And then the AI itself, as you said, is helping folks become even more proficient at developing exploits, or maybe perhaps discovering vulnerabilities at a faster pace and scale that we, historically couldn't do. But again, I think it's a double-edged sword. If we in security are early adopters of this technology, we can also use it to address systemic challenges that we have, not just let the defenders outpace us by early adoption and kind of experimentation with the technology. But we got to be early to the party. We can't be laggards like we historically have been in security. So we got to be early adopters alongside our adversarial peers, basically. And you talked a lot about, kind of budget constraints and things like that. And I've been sharing some reports from IONS and Article Search and others who show that security budgets, are facing some headwinds. Maybe not necessarily decreasing, but not increasing at the rate they previously have, or facing, more scrutiny, right? And part of that has kind of led to this debate, which has been around for a long time, but it got a lot of attention in the last year, which is, kind of platform versus point solution debates. We saw the industry leaders, kind of lean in with the platform angle of, hey, you can get more bang for your buck, more comprehensive capabilities. We do a whole swath of things. And then the kind of innovative startups are saying, yes, but we do this thing particularly well, better than the platform may do it, for example. So I'm curious your stance on this kind of age-old platform versus point solution, best of breed kind of debate, and how you see you guys fitting into that landscape.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you. 3 things that you mentioned, I'm going to use those 3 to convey my point. Number 1, best in breed. Number 2, platform versus point solution. And number three is, how do I do more with incremental budget increase? See, incremental budget increase is very important, because budget increase at a rate of 2, 3, 4% versus the infrastructure investment going up by 20-25% is different. So there's a big differential there. So number 1, going back to best in breed, every customer today today wants to be at a best of breed solution. Nobody wants to compromise that. That's a great news, right? Each of these best in breed controls produces best in breed quality data. The quality data still require massaging, it still require triaging, it still requires some analysis, right? Number one. Number two, there are platform debates happening all over us. Our opinion of the platform is platform should help you reduce the volume, reduce the work decision, cognitive decisions that we are making. So the whole purpose of bringing AI is to minimize the cognitive functions that humans are doing today and offload it to the AI. Versus the platform, they brings the data together, they give you the good visuals of multiple products into the one console, is not platformization. So platformization, in our opinion, is I have invested in hundreds of these tools or 50s of these tools. Can I do more by bringing these tools together into a single platform? And that's number one. Number two, how do you use the platform or bringing all these controls together to do two things? Number one is how do I minimize number of things I need to address? And number two, how do I make more actions faster? So finding normalization and response normalization, they both needs to happen. Whether it translates to patching or mitigation or or I'm accepting a risk is the decision making, right? That decision making now needs to go back to the platform. So platformization is important, but what we believe that it cannot be, it has to be vendor agnostic, number one. Number two, it has to drive the value on cognitive abilities or cognitive value versus just the visual representation. So if the humans continues to sit on the platform, keep going through hundreds and thousands or 2,000 vulnerabilities, there's no value of the bringing the data to the single platform. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, I like what you said, because often when we think about the alerts and the alert fatigue and the overload, it's often thought of in a technical sense, right? The number of vulnerabilities that are accumulating and stuff. But this has a real impact on the security practitioner who are trying to go through this information, decide what to do, in what order, what to prioritize, and aggregating just more work in a central place without the second step of what do I do about this, the remediation aspect. You're kind of leaving a gap there. And you talked about the platform has to be vendor agnostic. You talked about kind of this sprawl of security tools that we have out there. Another thing that I know you guys are big advocates of is, kind of the security agentic mesh, as you guys have called it. I think it's called, think about these intelligent layers among your security tools to bring together that data and make it actionable across your security tech stack, basically, driving higher ROI and more effectiveness of the tools that you have invested in and have spent on. Can you talk about that piece a bit?
Yes. So two things, again, going back to the same point we started with. Why we need AI? We need AI to help us on making decisions faster. We want AI to help us on remove the noise. Let me focus on things that I can actually either make action or I can just put them to rest, right? But the AI requires lots of data. The data requirement is why, because it's context. If you There are two aspects to the context. Number one, the context that AI can actually understand natively as a chain of thought. And the second context is the data that is sitting there, and I can use AI to run similarity searches. Fundamentally, AI can do two things. One, it can run some similarity searches on the data set that you have, which does not require a high quality, high degree of data. Simple data, vectorize it, you can do the similarity searches. Very basic use case. This is where I think industry started 2.5 years ago. You could do pattern analysis, you can create probability of what is the next word going to be, and etc. etc. The second value of AI is reasoning. Now, reasoning has two aspects. Number one, reasoning requires a very specific context that your AI model can actually take, build a chain of thought. What is chain of thought? Chain of thought is about logic, a business logic for that particular domain, so that it can produce some decisions on top of it, right? We think that unless you just bringing the data together from all the security tool is not enough. What you need to do is, as an industry, we need to bring the data together, but curate the data in the structure that helps AI to use that context for chain of thought. Because once you do that, you will see that your models, analysis layer, the software layer, which we now call it AI layer, AI agent layer, actually becomes smarter. So there is a reason why these agents are becoming more and more important, because agent gives you an ability to use these model based LLM powered analysis at a very large scale.
Yeah, I'd be
And
curious your perspective on something real quick. As you were saying this, it made me think about it. We think about this chain of thought reasoning, ability to be more autonomous and even take action, interact with tools. This kind of next phase of AI
yep,
adoption, right, in the broader software landscape, and of course in cyber. Some have had some concerns around, well, maybe the agents could have excessive autonomy, or maybe challenges around principles of least privilege, for example, which we know is a longstanding security concept, or maybe identities associated with the agents. Like, how do you think about securely unleashing and utilizing these agents in the
great question.
environments too?
Yeah, it's a very important point. So the way we look at is, uh, agents are nothing but a software entity interacting with two kind of aspect. One, it's interacting with your data, and it is interacting with your LLM, right? Which means that all the principle of authentication authorization that applied to human and the machine identity so far will apply in the AI agents also. Number one, I think that is the fundamental of everything that we do. We means the industry does today. So these agents are nothing but mimicking the human analyst. They're interacting with the data in the same way uh, a human analyst will do. Human analyst will make the interaction. Bringing authorization and authentication give the first layer of understanding or security. But the second and most important is intent. The big gap in the way AI needs to be secure. I'm now like a little bit of a switching the context here, that we now understood the immense value of having a AI curated mesh and a LLM and agents together. These three trios comes together, we can do the wonders. Now, if that part is established, you are able to produce multiple kind of output. Number one, you can patch and remediate things like the root cause analysis much faster. Number two is mitigations. Means I can use your existing controls. I can optimize those controls so that I can respond to your threats much faster. If your patching took 6 weeks or take 6 weeks to complete a patch, we can actually mitigate in less than a week. That's the that's a time reduction we're talking about. The number three is now, how do I secure my AI infrastructure? How do customer feel that are we secure enough or not? So there are multiple things involved. At multiple layer has to happen. Number one, you have to first do the right governance around what kind of models you are using. Are you using a public model? Are you using a private model? What kind of guardrails you have in place? Number one, guardrails for data loss, guardrails of privacy loss, and guardrails of model manipulations also. Number one. So those are very basic. I think nobody can get away without doing that. The number two is interaction between your agents and your models and your data. That is where the authorization and authentication comes into picture. RBAC is authorization, in my opinion, but it also translates into the intent based security. The intent based security is where you can actually understand the intent of AI agent and its interaction with the model, and you can provide guardrails around that. So one of the reason Tuskira has done a lot of things in house, and we spend so much time and being in stealth this time, so that we can come out with all the guardrails in place. Even if the tech, like the models are changing constantly, you have DeepSeek today, you have DeepSeek plus one tomorrow, plus two tomorrow. These fundamentals are not changing. not going to change. So as much as we practice the security to our customers, we also have to practice this, security aspect on ourselves also, which means that we are going to use the same set of tools more often. So the concept remains the same, that you have invested in best of breed controls. You have to now devise method to do more with these investments, these tools that you have already purchased. And so every tool that we are talking about for the AI guardrails, they're pretty much the standard ones, like using the API gateways, using which is now translating to SSL like LLM proxies, or your reverse proxies, your CASBs, your AWS AI Prism, and all those kind of aspects. So I know I've spoken a lot on one topic, but essentially it boils down to use AI to do better analysis of your security problems, but you also need to secure AI very well.
Yeah, I think it's well said. It's a double-edged sword, as I said. It has the opportunity to improve our, defenses and cybersecurity posture, but of course, we need to secure the AI itself, or it can introduce new challenges, attack vectors, and things like that that we hadn't dealt with previously. Something else I wanted to chat with you about is historically, and we've talked a lot about this with vulnerabilities and exploitation, things like that. Historically, security is often reactionary, right? We, deal with an
Right.
incident after something happens, something like that. And a lot of times it's due to issues like we talked about, workforce challenges, cognitive overload, alert fatigue, you name it, right? Limited resources. What are your thoughts around using the same technology to kind of shift to more of a preemptive risk defense type model, or look to minimize attack surfaces, kind of ahead of things happening?
Right. Yeah. Sorry. So, so basically, the you actually brought it up very, apt time. Proactive and reactive is something we need to relook at how whole detection and response have been happening, because detection is always something that either the problem exists or problem has already happened. Right? Exist means that you run a scanner, you find a vulnerability, you go and respond to it. Reactive means that there's an alert, incident is either happening or already happened, and then you respond to it. The preemptive means AI is all about predicting the next word. Similarly, AI is actually helping attackers to predict the next set of problems. Attackers are using all these technology the way we have used for which we have used for defending our own enterprises. For example, what attacker does today is, first thing they do, reconnaissance. They will come to your enterprise, run some tools, open source tools, run some PowerShell automation, so that they can find out the vulnerabilities. Now, what they're really doing are two things. Number one, they're looking at what are the toxic combination that they can exploit. They can exploit, means they haven't exploited yet. Second, how do we bypass the defense? We call it defense evasion also, right? Without bypassing the defense, no attack would ever happen. This is a very basic of any breach, right? If I have to complete a web application attack, I have to bypass multiple defense control. I have to bypass your WAF, API gateway, CDR, or CWPP. What you can preempt using the, if you build a solid understanding of your defense control, you can actually preempt that what are the places the defense evasion is highly likable versus just being a vulnerability exploitable. To take an example, let's say there's a vulnerability exist, the combination of multiple vulnerability exist, or toxic combination as we call them, but my EDR and the WAF defense in depth is very rock solid. Now, what we can use the whole tech is to go and find places where the confidence of defense evasion is very high. So you, even if those vulnerability in that defense evasion is low severity, you can actually make prediction that attacker is going to come there. So if you take an analogy of a home, your doors and windows are your vulnerabilities. The camera sitting on your doors are your defense controls. Attackers are not going to take the place, or enter from the place where the controls are working, right? So the whole narrative of just focusing on the vulnerability is not fundamentally right. So the preemption will happen not based on vulnerability. Preemption will happen based on identifying the risk of not fixing your control, because that will produce more solid outcome for attackers. And that is what we call that you have to preempt where attack is most likely to happen, because you have vulnerabilities that are exploitable, and you also have able windows for defense evasion, basically.
Yeah,
We are
I like where you're going with that. And I think it kind of speaks to some of the other things we touched on, which is not just, looking myopically at like a vulnerability as we talked about with a scanning tool, but looking at the entire architecture. And then we talked about those intelligent layers and bringing together that mesh of seeing across all the security tools in place, your entire architecture, any mitigating or compensating controls.
absolutely.
Where do you have these control deficiencies, or where do you have these kind of weak points, right? That they're more likely to be exploited or targeted by an attacker, or at least successfully exploited. And I think that that's kind of the next generation of how we look at cybersecurity defense, given the complexity of the modern, environment. When you go into an enterprise environment, for example. I'm really excited about where that's headed. But that
Yeah.
said, what's on the horizon for you guys at the team there, Tuskira? Where can folks learn some more? I put the website up here on the screen. That's tuskira.ai for folks that want to learn more. But what are you guys up to? What should we keep an eye out for?
Well, absolutely, and we are very excited about how we able to help our customer reducing their exposure by 99%. So preemption and helping customer improve their defense posture is actually helping them big time than just looking at the million of the vulnerabilities that they have. So it's a very interesting perspective, and honestly, the timing, the technology, AI, mesh, all these things are helping us. So we would give the credit to the tech here, not to the human who are working on it. Number one. Number two, we are looking forward to our new RSA launch coming up. We are launching something incredible on how do we make sure that these controls are we are looking to transform these static defenses. We call it static because you require humans or the policies or the rules. Transform these static defenses to more adaptive, self-adjustable security measures. That's has been a North Star. We believe that this is the right way to look at cyber in the world of, ocean of the vulnerabilities and the problems that customers are dealing with.
That's awesome. Yeah, we know that historically defenses, as you said, have been kind of point in time, static,
That's it.
implementations, shifting to a dynamic, kind of ephemeral defensive
Yep.
cybersecurity posture. Definitely sounds like it increases the level of, success that the attacker needs to
Yep.
have, right, to have an impact on the organization. So that's exciting. As I said, folks, check it out, Tuskira.ai. And Piyush, I'm grateful to have you on the call. Like I said, we've collaborated in the past, and I saw you kind of dive into this space and repeat founder with a solid team. I wanted to hear about what you guys were up to and where you're headed.
Absolutely. And thank you, Chris, for the opportunity here talking to you. And it's been always pleasure to talk to you. This is not the first interaction we had, and I'm looking forward to have more such conversations.
Likewise. Take care. Thanks to everyone who tuned in as well.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, everyone.